Easy lover, I'm never gonna break your heart. I'm a bending out of shape, but if you point out my mistakes, I'm not afraid to hit restart. I've been running, but you're the reason that I work so hard. And in a couple hours time, you'll see me racing yellow lights so the good life can start. Every hour of the day, I wonder what you're doing so far. Even when we're miles away, my watch is set to wherever you are. And my mind's always on.
See, one of the problems with picking a really good song to open the show with is then you don't really want it to stop, right? I don't want it to stop. You don't want it to stop. But that's not workable. I mean, I just can't play the whole song. Anyway, welcome. It's Ask or Tell Me Anything. As I was mentioning before the news, I took 3 days off, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of last week. And the problem with that is that your metabolism slows down. I realize how much of my life is highly dependent on adrenaline in a way that for a person of my age is probably not good for me. But so then today I was like a marionette whose strings had been cut. You know, I just was just very difficult even to get up off the floor. But I'm here, and it's Ask or Tell Me Anything, and you can talk about anything you want. And the number to call would be 888-720-9677. That number has an alias, 888-720-WNPR. Be on the lookout for that number. And we're going to just get going right now with one of our major contributors here, Lake Como Dave. Lake Como Dave, you have the floor. You're the first caller of the day. The way it used to be in the old days.
Greetings, Colin.
Greetings.
Well, to get the metabolism going, I'm just going to put a ball in the air and then see where it comes down. And I don't want to sound too downer with this, but I really feel this sincerely. You know, with all the protest footage we've been seeing on MSNBC and other venues, you know, it's very heartening. There's some amazing big city protests with like 1 million people and, you know, even the smaller towns, even in red states. This is all great. Where my mind just cannot avoid going with all this is, I mean, we saw the most amazing rallies with filled arenas, you know, 10, 20, 30,000 people for Kamala Harris in the fall. And, you know, I certainly was one of those people who started feeling, boy, this could happen. We're going to get this. We're there. We're home. And then nothing. It was just the most demoralizing. I'm not saying it was a drubbing, because you've made the point often that there is no mandate for Trump, you know, because he did not shellac her in the election. But I'm just wondering, is there something different about these protests that I should feel better about where this is going? Or is it kind of just be careful with your emotions?
I mean, I'm sort of going to give almost a non-answer, which is that one thing to think about in terms of the protests is that these protests, the ones that happened on April 5th, if that's what we're talking about, happened all over the country. So they're not really entirely analogous to a single Trump rally or to a single Harris rally. These are things that kind of happened I mean, look, if all you needed to do was fill an arena with 15,000 people on a regular basis to become president, you know, at a certain point, Jerry Garcia would have become the president of the United States. And I'm not even saying that would have been a bad thing. But you know, night after night after night, you go to a different place, you get 15,000 people to show up. So, I mean, that's doable. A lot of people do it. There are even people less talented, considerably less talented than Jerry Garcia, who are able to do that. So I actually think it's a little bit of a deceiving metric, and always was. And the reason that people kind of got reinterested in it was that Trump's rallies, it wasn't really that they were indicative of the size of his support. They were more indicative of the passion. You know, I mean, a rally is sort of a long tail thing, right? And it's really better to have 15,000 people who are frothing at the mouth, just crazy for you, nuts for you, willing to drive a long distance to get to your rally, than it is to have I don't know, 75,000 people who think you're kind of okay. You're not that bad. Yeah, it wouldn't be a big problem if you got elected. See, elections these days are won by the first kind of support, really intense kinds of support, or at least you can't win an election if you don't have some element of that. So I think that's why people got really interested in the rallies. I think the protests are different, and here's the part that's a non-answer. I don't know what kind of different animal they are. The ones that happened 2 Saturdays ago, I thought, there were a lot of people out there. The media seemed not to know how to cover it or even whether to cover it. I'm sure MSNBC did an excellent job. But I think for the most part, the mainstream media was a little tentative about how much to cover it, whether to treat it as a big story. And I think the other problem that they have right now is that there's no central organizing authority here. So there's apparently another thing on April 19th. Well, guess what? You can't just have them. You can't have 2 days a month that are like that. You have to sort of space them out. Everybody has to kind of agree on how often you're going to do them and when and where you're going to do them. And they in and of themselves won't really change anything anyway. But I thought so. I went as a journalist, as an observer. I went to the Hartford rally last 2 Saturdays ago. To me, what was more interesting was what was going on in the crowd. And what was going on in the crowd was that people who hadn't smiled or laughed very much for months and months were smiling and laughing because they were, you go there, you run into people speeches aren't that interesting, or maybe you can't hear them that well, so you wind up talking to the people around you. But the conversations you're having with the people around you, I thought were very, very, from what I could tell, good conversations, neighborly conversations, conversations in which people were exuding enthusiasm and affection for one another. And some of that's really important too. You can't have demoralized people who are going to have a hard time mounting a meaningful resistance movement. So they have to have something that's animating and energizing them. And I thought that was the value of those rallies. But, it's not COVID. You just can't do one vaccine. There's a lot of stuff you got to do.
Yeah, agreed. And I couldn't agree more that, the last thing we need is protest fatigue right now, where, weekly or biweekly, it needs to be concentrated on certain recurring points, but that don't become so humdrum. But it has to get converted to action. And I think, unfortunately, Democratic politicians are not enough until things get so dire, so threatening that some, brave Republicans, if any, finally just put a marker out there and say, that's it, I'm done. I'm cutting ties, and you need to do so to other, Republicans. I don't know of anything else that is gonna solve this.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for your call. And second of all, yeah, we're experimenting, if that's the right word, or we're being experimented upon, regarding a situation where the ordinary guardrails just don't exist anymore. That, most of these things in the past have had checks. Some of the checks have been structural, the courts, the Congress. Not clear that either one of those works anymore. Another kind of check has been political. Some things are just so politically unappetizing that they sort of cancel themselves. Doesn't seem to be happening here. Maybe it's happening. I mean, Trump's ratings approval ratings are somewhat underwater at this point, but not the way that they would be if everybody decided he was completely out of step with the rest of society. So it's unclear to me, and I think it's unclear to everybody, what the next, let's say, 6 to 9 months really look like. We know what they will look like if nobody does anything. We get a pretty good picture of that looking at other autocracies. If people don't, in fact, assert their rights, if people don't insist that Congress play a meaningful role in the governance of our country, if the courts just are steamrollered, we know kind of what America will start to look like, and it won't look like any kind of America that we lived in before. But how we avoid that, I mean, if I knew that, I wouldn't be sitting, maybe I would still be sitting here. I would be sitting here with an entirely different vibe, as the kids like to say. All right, let's go to Iman in New Haven. Hi, Iman. You're on the air.
Hi, Colin. Thanks for taking my call again. I was thinking a lot about how universities have kind of been bowing down to Trump, and wondering why all of these smart, intelligent people can't seem to like problem solve their way around all of Trump's demands and kind of say no and stand up to him. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that they are all people who have been in authority and they are used to maintaining the status quo, that they don't know what it means to resist. They don't know what it means to like get together with other people who also have less power and to like speak up to power. And I feel like they're not like, I don't know, like, are they having closed door meetings or do they talk across the nation with other university board members and presidents and everything to see like, what can we do as a collective? Are they talking with their students? Are they talking with their labor unions on campus who know what it's like to speak up to power? It just feels really frustrating. Like these people who are so intelligent just have no idea what resistance means.
Right. So let me respond to that in two ways. I mean, inevitably, there are conversations going on that we don't know about. However, I think the moment for really effective collective action was the first moment, and that was missed. Two groups of kind of thought leaders in this country had that happen. One of them was the big law firms, and the other one was the universities. And I don't think in either case, I don't think any law firm or any individual university should have tried to work out its own separate piece. That's kind of inevitably what they did decide to do. But that was the moment right away when the law firms should have all said, nope, we're going to do this together. You are not going to strip you're not going to strip security clearances and other kinds of access from this particular law firm without all of us banding together to do something about it.
Exactly.
But they didn't do that. And I mean, to that, in some ways, they have to do that. They would have had to abandon some of their nature to do it. I mean, one thing that Paul Weiss said was that one of the reasons that they did this was that there were other law firms circling around already kind of making overtures to clients, trying to pick off clients who might get lost.
Yeah, because they're in competition
right.
with each other, as are universities.
So you have to agree to suspend that. And because it's more important that your profession or your calling or your mission as a university survives than that you individually prosper in any way. Most of these, the partners of the big law firms are getting, multi-million-dollar salaries. They could probably, take a hit or two and survive much better than our system can survive if these things happen. So, yeah, I think universities, they kind of have to band together. They have to collaborate. And, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of risk there. But, I mean, some of the universities that have capitulated, it just seems like, wow, you didn't. I mean, Columbia, come on, man.
Yeah, and then it got worse.
Come on, just put up some kind of fight here and make some calls and see if we can all do this together. So
I guess, do you think it's too late, or do you think at this very moment they can make a different choice and that it would have an impact?
It's not too late. I mean, the right moment to do it was that first moment. But I understand they got caught flat-footed. They didn't see this coming. No, it's not too late. And that's what they should do. I'm not a university president. I haven't really thought through very well what collective action would look like, what they would... Because, I mean, for the most part, this is gun-to-head stuff, right? It's sort of like, do what we tell you or we'll shoot. And... I think the first thing that universities have to do is decide what the answer to that is. Now, some university presidents like Michael Roth at Wesleyan have come up with their own answers to it. But see, that's Wesleyan's answer. I don't want it to be Wesleyan's answer.
Yeah, you need a collective answer.
I want it to be higher education's answer. So I'm placing you in charge of this, Iman. Just give me a report next week. Let me know how things are going. That's what I'm going to do. You know what I've decided? That one of the problems with Ask or Tell Me Anything, I don't delegate enough. I need to delegate more. So from now on, people call up and they bring something up. I'm just going to say, you know what? You are a committee of one in charge of this. And I expect answers. I expect results. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to break a little bit early here. But then we're going to come right back. It's not a fundraising break or anything like that. And we're going to break a little early, and all kinds of excitement is going to happen today. You're just going to be so happy you're listening to this show.
It wouldn't be worth your tears. Don't try to make any changes, 'cause my mother's been trying for years. I drink when I sing. I never cap the toothpaste at my company. Manners are deplorable. I'm adorable, and love me as I am. Love me as I am.
All that I want is to wake up fine. Tell me that I'm alright, that I ain't gonna die. All that I want is a hole in the ground. You can tell me when it's alright for me to come out. Hard times gonna make you wonder why you even try. It's gonna take you.
That is David Byrne and Paramore together. That's not a pairing I didn't see coming. You know, the thing about David Byrne, it's taken me years to get used to it, but it always sounds like it's so hard for him to sing. It sounds like he's just trying so hard. And I now see the appeal of that. For a while, it was like, it's that hard. Have somebody else sing. All right, I have another artistic announcement, and I haven't even shared this with Dylan Reyes, but Dylan Reyes, our technical producer, and I, we often spend some of the time before a show, just brainstorming some ideas. And so we got to a certain place and then the show started, but I've thought about it a little bit more. And so here's my idea. Riverdance, kind of Irish thing where they hold their torsos really still and move their legs really fast? If that's a fair description. My idea is, obviously I'm from a generation that is getting on in years. And Riverdance, if it was ever within my reach, is certainly beyond my reach now. But what about Riverdance for people who do have a certain amount of arthritis and just some aging issues? And here's the thing that this Dylan will be hearing this for the first time, although he and I obviously will be doing this together. Pickle dance, all right? It's like pickleball. You do pickle dance, and that means it's river dance, but you don't have to move as much. There's a diminished range of motion. This is as far as I've gotten. All right,
There are the auditions.
I've been auditioning for pickle dance, I would say, for the last 10 years. I just didn't know it. All right, let's talk to Russell. Russell, who's in Brookfield. Let me see. Is Russell actually there? Now, no, there he is. There he is. Hi, Russell.
I'm here in Brookfield, yes. Hi, Colin. My question to you is, what's the point? And what's the point in these late-night comics just constantly doing their thing on Trump, and even, or maybe especially even Stewart, who, what has it done? It's not that funny anymore when you think about the consequences, and I don't even get any catharsis out of it. So I'm left wondering, what's the point? And as you might say, react to that.
So I will react to that. I think there still is a point. One thing that was during the election, we were doing shows with people like Ruth Ben-Ghiat who study strongman government. And inevitably, and I think Tim Snyder would say the same thing. I don't think I asked him about it. But first of all, the tyrants or whatever, the autocrats, they hate that. I mean, they really hate being made fun of. And I do think it doesn't have a measurable benefit, but it has an emboldening benefit. It kind of gets back to what I was saying about demonstrations before. If people are having fun and enjoying one another's company, that's actually, there's a value there. I don't know if I can quantify it or make it visible, but it's there as a value. And I think the other thing is, to me, the evolution has been, and if you go back in time, if you go back to when Johnny Carson ruled late night TV, one of the things political humor was very primitive. It wasn't really about politics very much. It was about whatever kind of personal flaw you could assign to. So Bill Clinton's a good example. I mean, this began way before Bill Clinton. But for most of the time that Bill Clinton was in office, they did jokes about how much he liked fast food and how overweight he was at the beginning of his time, and then they did jokes about him being kind of a hound dog, sex-wise, and of course that then turned out to be, to your point, a little bit less of a joke, but still.
Right, the stakes are hardly the same, and I also wonder if it contributes to some sort of inurement of the millions who watch this at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid concern. It's been brought up by a lot of people. I remember, I think it was Ned Cole, who was a long time progressive activist in Connecticut and nationally. I think he was the one he blamed David Letterman. He said David Letterman had kind of resigned everybody to the fact that everything sucks. And as a result, it was very difficult to motivate people towards non-suckage, to use a political science term. And so, I mean, I think that's not a bad point. I still think, but I think what's interesting now is, and particularly in the form of Jon Stewart, but also Seth Meyers and some of the other people, I mean, the political comedic commentary is very policy specific. You know, I mean, they're just doing a lot of material about tariffs. You know, I don't think comedians were doing material about tariffs when McKinley was president, let alone, you know, in the television age. But I mean, it's now, I mean, Stewart proved that you could get granular about policy, about actual, global behavior. You could get much more granular about the news and do comedy about it and have it be really funny. And I think other people have followed and have done that as well. So I don't know. When I watch Weekend Update on SNL and they're doing Trump material, I'm going, good. That's at least one little price he has to pay. I mean, I'm not in favor of removing the prices that Donald Trump has to pay to do insane, power-hungry things. There, you know, as we said at the beginning with Lake Como Dave, there are few enough. I mean, Congress seems unwilling to make him pay a price, and the Supreme Court's kind of iffy about it. Yeah, maybe certain prices, but not all of them. So, you know, I understand what you're saying, which is that it stops seeming new after a while, but.
It doesn't do anything. It doesn't apparent. I mean, I thought Stewart going way back. I thought, you know, he was, like you say, he got down into the details. He was persuasive, funny, you know, Will Rodgery kind of thing. And yet.
Yeah. I mean, well, you can't expect comedians to create results. That's not what they do. But I think there's a real value in it anyway. Okay, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen now, which is that two people that you really, really like a lot are sitting nearby me, Frankie Graziano and Robin Doyen-Aiken, who actually is her whole, we're actually uploading our consciousness into an artificial public radio life form called Receptor. So this is one of her last days as Robin. She'll actually be mostly a machine. So in just a little while, not right now, I'm going to give them the chance to settle in, nest a little bit. Or are we going to a break? Are we going to go straight to a break? I hear music. You want to go to a break? Okay. That's what's going to happen. All right, we are back. That was the Maestro's Choice, a song by Couch called A Little Less Over You. Time to say some thank yous, starting with the Maestro himself, Dylan Reyes. And Lily Tyson is producing this show. It's Lily Tyson Quality Entertainment Productions produced this show. We got Meg Fitz on the phones. And, of course, we've got Receptor and Frankie are here. They'll be fundraising right at the end of the show today. And I also have to tell you this, that a week... Is it a week? No. It's not. April 29th, on Tuesday, April 29th at 7 p.m., we are going to produce a show about Romeo and Juliet at the Hartford stage. I think we're going to be on the stage. I think we're going to live tape the show on stage. Tickets are now available for free. You can find those at ctpublic.org/Colin. I probably should have pre-read this copy. Anyway, that's what I believe is going to happen. You know, I mean, I've seen so many productions of Romeo and Juliet, too, and including what I think is probably the worst production of Romeo and Juliet ever staged. I'm not going to name names right now, but when it's done well, and by the way, spoiler, they die. All right, we're going to go to the phones here, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. And see, man, maybe there should be a superannuated version of Romeo and Juliet, too, where they're not old, and they don't die, they just get into a pretty good assisted living place together. All right, we're going to go to Mary. Mary is the aforementioned bee caller. So here we go. Hi, Mary.
Hi. I just wanted to remind everybody that the bees are very important to us. It affects our food supply tremendously, and to not use herbicides or pesticides and leave your leaves down for the month of April and then do a no-mow May, because it's important.
Well, yes, and the New York Times did a fairly comprehensive piece over the weekend about the bees. The bees are just getting it every which way. It's not just colony collapse disorders and stuff like that. It's everything. It's pesticides, like you're saying. It's global warming. It's everything.
Cannabinoids.
Yeah,
yes.
It's everything. The bees are just and was it Albert Einstein? It's either Albert Einstein or Albert Schweitzer. One of them said.
One of the smart guys.
One of the smart guys said the bees are the key to everything. No bees,
you know that.
You got nothing. All right. Well, thank you for doing that. We are going to get on this. We've already every single public radio show does an episode about bees in one of their first 2 seasons. So we've done now several shows about bees, but we'll do another one. They're worth it. They're out there working for us. All right, because I believe this is who Frankie meant when he said 10-time Tony, which is not actually a name that I had previously bestowed on him, and I'm not sure how comfortable he would be about it. But here is Anthony from New Haven, a.k.a. possibly 10-time Tony. Hi, Anthony.
Hey, Colin. Thanks for taking my call. I started getting into stand-up comedy about a month ago, and started doing some local open mics, reading about it. And one of the first things that I did was to listen again to your episode last year about the state of stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. And given that I have a month under my belt, I think I am supremely qualified to give my opinion on it. So here we go. And by the way, I'm a big fan of Sean Murray. I love what he had to say about sort of comedians. Just because you have a philosophy doesn't mean that's necessarily something that people should want to follow. And by the way, if you're looking for a birthday gift for me, my birthday is coming up, it would be an introduction to Sean Murray.
Oh, I can handle that. Yeah.
Okay, great. But yeah, I wanted to add a little bit to that because, from what I've read,
Robin's writing that down. She's going to make that a pledge. A pledge of $12 a month or more, you can meet Sean Murray. Anyway,
there's strings.
Anyway, continue.
Yes. So, I've read a lot about sort of the state of stand-up comedy and listening to your show, talking about comedians sort of branching out and taking, joking less and taking on the role of sort of social critic or a philosopher more. But, from what I understand too, and this is what I've read, audiences are expecting more authenticity, expecting more of comedians, more of their true selves as opposed to their comedic personas. And I'll just give you a quick example. I watched an early special of Sarah Silverman, and then I watched her most recent one, and it's very different in terms of there's far less of the sort of ditzy persona that she is famous for. There are fewer jokes, there are longer setups, and so I guess I'm curious your take on this idea that this is, in some ways anyway, what audiences actually want. They want less comedy from their comedians.
Yeah, I don't know that I would necessarily put it that way. I also don't think there's just one audience. I mean, I think one of the reasons that there are a lot of different comedians is that there are people who gravitate to various styles. I mean, for me, probably the the comic I'm the most interested in today and for the last few years is Taylor Tomlinson. I think she's a pretty good example, at least, of somebody who has kept it really authentic. I mean, almost everything that she does works out of her life, and she doesn't veer very far away from the. If you go back to the first one she did, Quarter Life Crisis or whatever it was called, she's not that different now. I mean, different stuff has happened to her, but her method is still the same, which is to be very real and honest about her life, but also craft these jokes down to the last demi-syllable too. So, but I think there are other people who maybe do want something a little bit more conventional, and that this is why there isn't just one comedian who thrives. There are a bunch of them. What I think is different these days, to Russell's earlier point, is the way that we now see comedians. I mean, in a way, I should have said this with Russell too. We've actually changed our expectations of comedians. Nobody thought that Lenny Bruce was going to fix anything, Nobody thought that Mort Saul was going to fix anything. But now there's this sense that, wow, maybe if Jon Stewart could just say it the right way, it would really improve things a lot. And that's quite a burden to put on comedians, that, okay, yes, he's going to speak the truth, and the truth is going to be so powerful in the way that he speaks it, and also, by the way, funny, that we're going to see some kind of significant change. That's a lot to ask of comedy. So I don't know. And you're out in the clubs, Anthony, so you may have a better sense of this. I don't think that people want less comedy from their comedians, but I think there are audiences who are looking for something very authentic. And authentic can be funny at the same time, right?
Yeah, I guess, I should have, I don't think I put it very well. They're less interested in setup and punchline, setup and punchline, quick setups and punchlines that transition very quickly from joke to joke to joke, as opposed to more of a storytelling format with longer setups.
Yeah, no, and I think Tomlinson does that very well. There's a connective tissue to her type of thing. And I would also say even a guy like Nate Bargatze, it's more storytelling than it is setup and punchline. On the other hand, if nobody liked that, what would happen to Stephen Wright? What has happened to Stephen Wright? Is Stephen Wright okay? But I mean, he's just like, I bought some instant water. I don't know what to add to it, and that's the joke. And he goes on to the next one. So I don't really do a very good Stephen Wright impersonation. But this is an interesting thing to talk about. 10-time Tony, possibly now 11-time Tony. Difficult to say. Our number, by the way, if you should want to call in, and why would you at this point? But 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. And as the callers have proven, it can be about our worsening political situation, but it also can be about bees and stand-up comedy. And for that matter, bees doing stand-up comedy, which is something that hasn't been tried yet. But it's coming. All right. We have Ev. Ev is on the line right now. You have the floor.
Oh, hi.
Hi,
Colin. After Saturday and the Columbia student lost his right to not be thrown out of the country, I had an idea that we should form an organization called Free Speech Proxies, or maybe alternatively First Amendment Proxies. And then, so I would go find myself a Venezuelan with tattoos and interview him, and then find out what his feelings are. But since I'm an old guy without tattoos, then I could go out and represent his point of view, and I would not be thrown out of the country by the Secretary of State. Or less likely, at least. But so I don't know. I thought I'd call in and see if I get any traction out of you for this idea.
So let me I want to make sure that I understand your idea and all of its refinements. So the idea was you would find somebody here in America and you would talk to that person until you felt that you understood their point of view well enough so that you'd be the front. You'd be the front.
I would be the person to express their view and would say so, even though we'd have to work on anonymity of the thing because maybe the ICE would find him anyway if I divulged a name. But I could be an authentic spokesperson for this individual. I mean, it could be any one of those. I mean,
of course, the other thing you could wind up doing is accidentally opening the door for them to deport people who are proxies and who's citizen. I mean, look, they're very close to doing that anyway. I mean,
I'm an older than you white guy, so I think I have less of a chance to get thrown out of the country than these guys. And then all of a sudden the absurdity of it all would become apparent, hopefully. I mean, probably not. I'm not. Depends on who you're talking to, of course. But the point is to.
I think people had a lot of opportunities to grasp the absurdity. I mean, it's surprising that we're still looking for new ways to do that. Well, I'm not going to cast asparagus on this idea. It could work. I mean, I really do think the biggest problem with it is your apparently ironclad belief that you would not be deported. And I mean, it's something that people keep saying, which is that if in fact, like the guy who's in El Salvador now, who everybody agrees, A, was deported by mistake, and B, the courts are saying you got to get him back, you got to bring him back, and he's still not being brought back. To me, that means that anybody could be deported. Anybody could be deported on almost any pretext. There's, I mean, I hate to be, I don't know.
I know. I'm aware of that. But on the other hand, it's like, I mean, these guys do a big photo op. Like, so you got a bunch of guys who had their heads shaved, and maybe they have a tattoo, and they're all up in chains, and now it's like some kind of MS something or other, whatever the hell that means. And so, I mean, I could. Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm going to stand in for those guys necessarily. I'm just saying that
you would want to find one person here in the U.S. who's a little bit more vulnerable than you are, but needs to have
everybody. I think,
needs to have his or her voice heard. I think we need to work on branding. I don't think the word proxy really works in terms of
I'm really interested in your feedback on how to get this off the ground because it's really important.
Well, first of all, we need a couple of billion in seed money, but that'll be easy. We can raise
that's true. We'll get it from Musk.
That's how everything starts. So it's an interesting idea. I mean, it really is an interesting idea, and you clearly put some thought into this too. And so I applaud you for that. That yes, maybe.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that's true.
This took at least 20 minutes of your time.
She said, tell me some detail. And I said, what detail? I just thought of it. So
look, we've seen
how does that work?
We've seen global tariffs imposed with considerably less forethought than you've put into your proxy idea. So I tip my hat to you. I won't hear of anything being taken away from you. So no, I think it's a good idea. I mean, or at least it's an idea worth pursuing and thinking about some more.
Yeah, what's your reaction? You have a bad reaction to proxy, and you don't like that word.
I mean, it's sort of stock ownership-y kind
Westgate Sportsbook.
Yeah, see, Frankie doesn't like it either. Receptor is being quiet so far.
No, I'm just thinking about
we're recharging Receptor. We have Receptor plugged into a power unit right now, so you'll be able to hear Receptor later. So yeah, I don't know. I just think proxy's the wrong word. But then we have to just find out what the right word is. It's easy to figure out what the wrong word is. All right, I'll work on it. You'll work on it. Call back in the very near future. All right, we've got just a few minutes left here. I could squeeze on another call if you want. 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. Failing that, I will say the following thing, and it might even kind of set up the pledge break, that's coming here. So I didn't see 60 Minutes last night. But then I watched today. I watched the Zelensky segment and I watched the Greenland segment, which were basically, your typical 60 Minutes journalism. I mean, nobody was doing anything kooky or anything. I mean, I watched them having seen this explosion on social media of President Trump insisting that the FCC de-license CBS because 60 Minutes reported stuff in a way that he doesn't like. And I'm laughing about that, but I'm also not laughing about that because what he is really saying now, not that he hasn't done other versions of this in the past, but it seems to be done with a more iron fist this time, that in fact he considers points of view that he finds unpleasant to be actionable at a government level, which is, freedom of the press is a term we throw around a lot. It's there in our Bill of Rights. I can't imagine anything more inimical to the idea of freedom of the press than a president who thinks that because he didn't like the content that was shown on a very popular news magazine program the night before, the network that carries that content, that carries that program, should lose its broadcast license. Now, I also realize that a lot of what Donald Trump does is influenced by the World Wrestling Entertainment. It's kayfabe. It's not, I mean, I don't know how serious these proposals are, but he's often, I think, trying to call a lot of attention to himself and his pet peeves and his dislikes in a highly theatrical way. And of course, the most theatrical way that he can think of to do it would be a wholesale violation of our Constitution.
It's WrestleMania week. I'm glad you said kayfabe.
Yeah, no. I mean, once I learned about kayfabe, I understood so many more things than I had previously understood. So, yeah, I just feel like knowing that, I mean, why would you do that? Why would he have the reaction that he had? And I think the reaction that he had in particular, assuming he even watched the segment, which is not a given, is that Zelensky had a chance to just sort of really state his case and explain what's happening, what he understands to be what's happening, what he thinks the stakes are, as opposed to the very World Wrestling, WWE experience of the Oval Office with J.D. Vance and Trump almost literally tag teaming him. Zelensky had a chance to kind of go long a little bit and explain stuff, and that's exactly the kind of free flow of information that Donald Trump doesn't like. So the free flow of information is very important. Thank you for listening today. Some people, just after the music, are going to ask you to support the free flow of information.
I know you got problems.
Following is the pre-show warm-up that you can find on the YouTube live stream of our call show on the Connecticut Public YouTube channel. The stream picked up in the middle of our conversation about our recent taping at the Watkinson School. We may have forgotten that we were going live.
Well, I mean, hopefully we're not doing this again anytime too soon, but when we do it, we need to talk some more about that. Because I'm always a little puzzled by it too, because like if you've got me and LaTanya and Atla all singing, and I know, the crowd mics are separate and mixed differently, but still, it just seems like maybe we should just have them sing or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I like the crowd idea. I want to say that, I like the crowd idea. Just getting clarity on the recording is really difficult, especially in that particular space, because all of the sound from your loudspeakers just bounces right off of where they're sitting. And so even if I'm only aiming at the crowd, I'm gonna hear the reflections.
Well, I was about to say we should have a meeting about that, but we shouldn't have a meeting about that because there's way too many meetings. But it's worth thinking about anyway.
We should create a Outlook invite about that.
You know what you should do? You should just jot down a few notes about all this, and then we can sort of talk about it. And
because
go ahead.
I was just gonna say the best sounding part of the show right now. Is the Matt and Atla, the Are You There, their rendition.
Oh, good.
That's it. It grooves so hard. It's so good.
Yeah.
And that's the best sounding part of the show.
And I assume we're going to get Lou's bass up a little bit on that too.
Yeah.
I don't know how it sounds. I mean, all I know is on stage, I thought I wasn't hearing the bass enough.
That's because when we were in sound check, we were hearing the bass too much.
Okay.
And then we went the other way. But I have Lou's bass pretty recorded. That's just, I've got a lot of, I don't know how to mix that room really well, and I think it shows.
Well, who's going to mix it? Are you or Pants?
So I mixed the show, and then I send it to Pants as just
and then he
one wave.
That's what we do with the holiday show.
And then he just cuts it up.
I thought we might be doing it differently. I mean, it's such a freaking, it's a long haul for you.
I mean, I have fun with it. I'm just happy I have more time this time because turning around that holiday show in like
we got plenty. Yeah, we won't do that again.
I need to turn the lights on for the pledge.
But there may be some adjustments we can make. Like, what if when the crowd is singing, we cut the speakers? Like,
that's something that we could do.
I mean, wouldn't that help though?
It would for sure help. It would. I mean, I would still want like you or LaTanya or whoever to just still sing. The microphone.
I see now that you have spoken about this. I see that it is important that that one or more people on stage sing this, because in fact, if it's cloudy, if it's messy, you've got to have something to turn to. Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
So I get that. Okay.
We have people on YouTube, so I'm going to play music for them.
Okay.
But also, I still want to talk about the...
Well, it's fascinating.
I want to do more of these shows. I said this to Pants. I was kind of disappointed that the next one, theoretically, that we're doing isn't until the holiday.
Actually, I wrote a whole newsletter about that. I kind of revised it. I revised my thinking. I'll send you it was for her. So I'll send you the newsletter. No, we could do another one. We have to figure out what it is. I mean, that would be good. I think that's key.
We can't just all get together.
Showing up at Watkinson and then thinking, just sort of spontaneously deciding what that is probably not workable.
It's a very jazz gig thing to do.
It really would be. From a kind of not a show about a tapir or a show not about a tapir point of view, that would be kind of interesting to show up.
It'd
be hard to promote it. It would be hard to get an audience there. It'd have to be very sort of John Cage kind of daring people.
It would be interesting, too, because then if we wanted to do a sing-along, it would be us being like, all right, someone call a tune, like out in the audience.
And then somebody else write down the lyrics to the tune and pass them around. Yeah.
We can just...
I'm sure, jazz people, they do that. I mean, not that, but...
Yeah. Or we can just, call and response 2 minutes, by the way. We can sing it to them, and they can sing back, and it'll be
that'd be nice.
A good time. That'd be fun.
No one ever called me sweet. What a miracle.
I'm feeling revived by this conversation.
Good. I am, I spent all weekend, or not all weekend. I did this river dance show this weekend. And
I've actually never seen you do your Irish dancing. I'd like to see it at some point. Maybe sometime when we have the cameras on here.
For $5 a month. I made the mistake of leaving my comms open this weekend, and I'm reading a score to call this show because I'm the stage manager, essentially. I'm managing stagehands and projection and lighting and, different set cues. And I left my mic open, and I don't know how familiar you are with Riverdance, but there's a lot of asymmetrical meter stuff that's kind of difficult to count 1 minute. So I'm just sitting there directly into the comms mic for the entire house, just going... And someone was like, is something broken on comms? And then my friend went, oh yeah, it's just Dylan's brain. So
maybe we could do a river dance at once.
No, I'm done. I don't need to think about it for a while.
Presenting river dance by people who do not know how to do that kind of dancing.
But then we would when I was sitting on breaks between shows backstage, I would just work on the mixes, and it was really fun.
We do Riverdance chronic end stage arthritis version. The people like me just sort of
there's a lot more whinging and
slightly
pain.
Bend our knees a little bit.
All right, we should start the show.
Okay.